Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll show you a recap of the 2014 American psychological thriller titled Gone Girl. As always, spoiler alert, watch out, and take care. The movie kicks off with a man named Nick catching up with his close sister named Margot at a bar they own. Today marks his 5th anniversary with his wife, but apparently, all is not well as he seems gloomy and sad. Talk about relatable. As the duo converse, we briefly see how Nick met his wife, Amy, who they easily bonded over their shared writing careers. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a call from Nick's neighbour, and he hurriedly heads back home. He is shocked to find a chaotic scene in his house and immediately calls out for Amy, who is unresponsive. He calls the police, who show up with detectives Rhonda as the lead detective with the help of Officer Gilpin. With Nick's help, they navigate the entire house for clues, while Nick answers some of their questions. It turns out that they've been around for only 2 years as they moved from New York City to take care of Nick's mother, who was ill at the time but recently passed away. In the kitchen, Rhonda comes across some spilled blood and marks it off as they proceed to Amy's home office. She is surprised to find out that Nick's wife is the amazing Amy, who she recognizes from her popular books. The trio then heads to the station to pick Nick's sample for examination, since the case hasn't taken shape yet and a homicide situation hasn't been scrapped off the list yet. When Rhonda inquires about the details concerning his wife, such as her friends and daily routine, he seems to know less and claims that she has no friends and likes reading most of the time. About himself, he outlines that he runs the bar alongside his sister and also tutors creative writing. He is asked to account for his day, and his first stops after leaving the house was at the beach to have some alone time before he proceeded to the bar. They finish their talk and he is asked to keep off the house to allow for further investigations, and his sister openly welcomes him. As Rhonda heads back to the house, she bumps into a lady named Noelle, who identifies herself as Amy's best friend, and she promises to talk to her later on. At the house, financial analysis is brought to Rhonda, which reveals that everything is registered under Amy's name, including the house, the cars, and even the bar that Nick claims to own. Additionally, one of the officers comes across an envelope in the drawer reading Clue 1, which gives them a head start in this case. In the next cut, Nick meets Amy's parents, and together they proceed to hold a press conference, appealing to anyone with information to come forward to help the investigators. They then have a talk on Amy's history, where 2 names pop up. One, Tommy O'Hara, who was sued by Amy for sexual harassment during their relationship. The second one is called Desi Collins, who is a rich fellow obsessed with her to the extent of stalking her and has recently relocated not far away from their residence. Totally a new lead here. They later part ways, but Rhonda calls Nick and reveals the envelope collected earlier on. He instantly recognizes it as part of the treasure hunts that Amy sets up during her anniversaries. He deciphers it easily, but it only leads him to a second envelope titled Clue 2 in his home office, which further redirects them to a brown house, but he denies knowing that. However, all is not over as Rhonda comes across an undergarment as she surveys the office. And obviously, as a man, Nick denies knowing about it. When they part ways, Nick rushes to his dad's house, which is a brown house mentioned in Clue 2 envelope. Strangely, the alarm goes off as if a person is tampered with the passcode. He finds another envelope titled Clue 3, but detectives get to the house instantly while responding to the alarm, prompting Nick to hide the envelope. In the next cut, we go through a monologue by Amy as she takes us through the hiccups in their marriage over time. What started as a happy marriage started turning sour after the occurrence of the recession and the loss of jobs for both of them. Additionally, Amy's parents plunged into huge debt, after which Amy unilaterally decided to offer them her savings, close to $1 million. This rubbed Nick the wrong way, as he felt left out of this vital decision making. At the same time, Nick's mother fell ill, and their relocation to Nick's hometown worsened the situation, as Amy felt left out since Nick decided to relocate without consulting her. At this point, Amy felt that Nick only kept close to her in fear of losing the bar, which was under her name. When she brings up the idea of having a baby, Nick is annoyed, as he thinks it's her strategy to save their marriage by doing so. Things escalate fast, and they end up having a physical confrontation. Back to the present day, Nick is visited by one of the students named Andy, and whom he has an affair with. He is still in his sister's house, and despite trying to push her away, they end up spending the night together. He then wakes her up early to leave before his sister Margot wakes up, and immediately she leaves. Margot comes out at him angrily as she is aware of his actions. As they check up on the TV, they notice a defense attorney named Bolt who specializes in defending men accused of similar cases. Margot thinks it's wise to hire him since the case is slowly picking up and not in his favor at all. In the next cut, Rhonda and Gilpin up their digging and realize Amy tried purchasing a gun. Further forensic analysis reveals massive blood stains on the kitchen floor matching Amy's blood type, which was wiped. The suspected weapon was a blunt object, most likely a club. We then cut to Nick, who attends a vigil for his missing wife and once again urges anyone with information to please come forward. He is cut short by Noelle, who demands an explanation as to where he took his 6-week pregnant wife. Oh, we didn't know that. Rhonda follows up to inquire about it, but he dismisses it, saying Noelle is crazy. At this point, Rhonda takes him through their findings, starting with the crime scene was staged and lots of blood was mopped from the kitchen floor. She explains that the absence of both blood and a body are signs of kidnapping, while the lack of a body with blood presence is linked to homicides. Additionally, Amy's life insurance was bumped up by him to $1.2 million, which translates to an increased income for him in case Amy passed away. But Nick argues she had him do that herself. On top of that, credit card records reveal that he had purchased items over $100,000, to which he denies having purchased and terms it a forgery. Immediately, Rhonda receives a call and is notified that Amy's medical records reveal that she was actually pregnant. With all the findings pointing to him, he realizes that his ship is slowly sinking, and he stops talking, promises to only do so in the presence of a lawyer. When they leave, he embarks on tackling Clue 3, which leads him to his sister's woodshed, which upon opening finds all the items purported to have been purchased by him under the credit cards. Amongst the item is a wrapped gift accompanied by a letter with a coded message from Amy. Upon decoding it, he realizes that she is framing him for the murder, which she is smartly orchestrated and executed. On the other hand, Rhonda visits Nick's father's house. As she wonders what his intentions were that night, they find him there. She explains to Gilpin that pushing such a case without a body is a nightmare, and her focus is to find it. She leaves no stone unturned, and finally discovers a partially burned diary written by Amy in an incinerator in the basement. The movie then transitions to a monologue of Amy as she explains the setup, as she avenges Nick's actions towards her, claiming he took away her pride, hope, dignity, and money. Her first step was to befriend Noelle, and feed her a tainted picture of Nick to get her as a witness. She also asks Nick to step up her life insurance, which he does as she controls the finances. To achieve sympathy with the crowd, she fakes a pregnancy by including a stolen urine sample in her medical record. She then moves on to fake the scene while leaving noticeable mistakes, enough to raise doubt. She uses her blood to stain the kitchen floor and wipes it poorly as if it was a person in a hurry. She then moves ahead to write in her diary, with the ending as a punchline that feared that Nick would kill her. She proceeds to partially burn it up in Nick's dad's house and alters the passcode to the alarm. She also links Clue 2 to Clue 3. This way, Nick would show up in search of Clue 3, and his usual passcode would raise an alarm, which would then account for the partially burnt book, as it would imply he didn't have the time to burn it completely. She also places a club stained with her blood in Nick's fireplace, which would imply he used it to perpetrate the attack. She also places items she bought using the credit cards in Margot's woodshed to imply that Nick hid them there. Her last step is to get rid of herself by drowning herself, and Nick would finally be accused of dumping her. As part of her story, we realize that Amy was fully aware of her husband's affair, as she once saw him make out with Andy. Back to the present, we meet Amy, who is obviously much alive and goes by the alias Nancy as she moves on with her new life. She calls the police from a landline while using a soft voice and reports some abnormal activities around Margot's woodshed as she attempts to expose the items. On the other hand, Nick meets Bolt, whose bookkeeping fee is way up due to his expertise and experience. However, Margot offers to kick in to aid her brother, and immediately the work commences. According to him, changing the perception of people toward Amy is the key in the case. Nick located Tommy, and just like in the case, she orchestrated a rape case which was since then caused detrimental effects in his life. He then moves on to Collins, who refuses to offer him details. Back to the detectives, Gilpin is convinced that Nick is the perpetrator, but attentive Rhonda slowly identifies inconsistencies in the case. Later on, Bolt joins his clients and comes up with a strategy to feature Nick in an interview. Though the idea seems shady, they embark on a rehearsal to ensure he performs well as they aim to clean up the public profile. In the next cut, Amy is robbed by her unsuspecting neighbours and, left with no choice, contacts Collins. He offers her a stay in his elegant lake house in the hopes that she reconsiders him. He assures her that her security is uptight since there is 24/7 camera surveillance. On the other hand, Nick is ready and the interview rolls up as planned. Amy watches the interview and is moved by his words as he makes several confessions. "Time to go home, my lady." Doing what she does best, she manages to craft a rape scenario and ends up eliminating Collins, appearing as if she did so as self-defense. On the other hand, the analysis of the club found in Nick's fireplace is complete, and the blood traces match those of Amy. Rhonda is finally convinced and moves on to arrest Nick, but Bolt comes to his rescue and he's released on bond. Shortly afterward, the unexpected happens as Amy turns up with blood-stained clothes and is rushed to the hospital, where the doctor confirms the possibility of sexual assault and her action towards Collins are justified. She then goes ahead to place the ordeal on Collins, who she says kidnapped her due to her obsession with her. She reveals that he did the unthinkable and her escape was a narrow one. Though many buy the story, Rhonda continually questions her about the inconsistencies, but she retaliates by referring to her as incompetent. To settle matters and avoid more publicity, Nick agrees to take her home. However, he notifies her that he would be leaving her after everything settles. With Amy only giving details of her actions in the shower to avoid being recorded, he doesn't gather enough evidence to sue her for her crimes. Additionally, Amy is now pregnant after using Nick's sample from a fraternity clinic. She did this as she knows Nick would not abandon his kid, and true to her words, he opts to stay. His sister finds it hard to keep up with the decision to live with her, but agrees to support him anyway. The movie ends with a staged reunion as the duo keeps up for the sake of their kid. As I started by saying, a controversial movie it is. Thank you for watching. We hope you liked this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. If you have a movie you'd like us to recap, let us know in the comment section below and we'll get on it. Once again guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.